Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chade Chitarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha, Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes, so here we are, devotees. And we are beginning the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, as it is. And let us read. We have some points to make by way of introduction. So please listen carefully. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport of the first verse of chapter 9, the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. And in the second and third chapters, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapters are specifically related to devotional service, and because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness, they're called more confidential. But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed, pure devotion. Therefore, this is called the most confidential. So a little bit further though, in the 8th chapter, Lord Krishna has explained that the Ananya devotee, remember the term Ananya, no other, just pure devotional service. So Lord Krishna has explained in the 8th chapter that the Ananya devotee surpasses both light and dark conditions of material existence and gains the best of everything and more. In this chapter, the importance of Ananya Bhakti is going to be stressed more and more, even in some very extraordinary ways. We're coming into the very heart of the Bhagavad Gita, so we're going to be seeing some of the highest concepts in Krishna consciousness coming out, particularly towards the end of this chapter. And in the beginning of the next, in the beginning of the 10th chapter also, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the Bhagavad Gita, listen to this is very interesting and it's important too. Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all Vedic literature. And the middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita are the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. So they are the essence of the essence, you could say. And the 9th and 10th chapters, the 9th and 10th chapters are the essence of the essence of the essence. They're the essence of the middle 6 chapters. The essence of the essence of the essence. Well, it's true and it's very amazing and it's very important. He explains that the first 6 chapters have introduced bhakti. The 7th and 8th have explained bhakti, but there's been some mention, as we saw last night, of karma, jnana and yoga, although the subject has definitely been really pure devotion. So the 9th and 10th are explaining simply pure bhakti, Ananya Bhakti. So it is said that this Ananya Bhakti has the potency to overwhelm attachments, overpower attachments to karma, jnana, and yoga, jnana yoga, karma yoga, or yoga mishra yoga, or jnana bhakti, karma bhakti, or yoga mishra bhakti. Yes, it's very powerful, like the strong currents of the Ganges coming down from the mountains, powerfully sweeping away everything with great force. It needs nothing else. Ananya Bhakti, pure Bhakti, needs nothing else to purify the heart. But to come to this Ananya Bhakti level, one needs to understand Krishna. So Lord Krishna will speak further about his opulences, so we can appreciate him more for what he is. Aha. Yeah, so he's going to explain more about his opulences, so our minds become attached to him. We need to know some of these things in order to be appreciative of him and inspired to worship him and take him seriously. So here we have devotees in this chapter. We have 34 verses, 34. They're divided into 5 sections as follows. From verse 1 to verse 3, hearing about Krishna, qualifications and disqualifications. Then the second section is from verse 4 to verse 10. Krishna's achintya, abade relationship with the material world. We've mentioned abade, tattva, the philosophy of that everything is different from, but abade, not different from Krishna. So this is then Krishna's abade relationship with the material world. Then from verse 11 to verse 15, non-worshippers and worshippers. It's like non-devotees and devotees. Non-worshippers and worshippers, verse 11 to verse 15. Then the fourth section, verse 16 to verse 25. Krishna is the supreme object of worship. And then 26 to 34, the glories of directly worshipping Krishna. 26 to 34. Okay, very good. So let us begin. First section, verses 1, 2, and 3. Hearing about Krishna, qualifications and disqualifications. All right, so let's read the translations of these first 3 verses then. Verse 1. Well, as a little footnote, non-enviousness gives one the qualification to hear confidential knowledge. And faithlessness disqualifies one and forces one to fall down and go back to repeated birth and death. Verse 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence, because you're never envious of me. 2, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It's the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. That's pretty amazing. And verse 3, the other side of the story. Faithlessness, enviousness, the wrong side of the story. Verse 3, those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. Okay, Krishna. So let's go through these verses a little bit. They're all very important verses. So verse 1. And just remember the sort of underlying theme. Non-enviousness gives one the qualification to hear confidential topics. But faithlessness, enviousness, faithlessness, disqualifies one and practically forces one to fall down. So verse 1, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Well, okay. So, of course, the theme in the positive sense is to hear, hearing. Lord Krishna is about to let Arjuna hear the most confidential knowledge and realization, and on hearing which he's going to be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Oh gosh. Oh, that's important. So Srila Prabhupada begins the purport. As a devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. This hearing process is recommended in Srimad Bhagavatam. The messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed amongst devotees, not others. Yeah, so that's very important. Second paragraph, in the second paragraph, Prabhupada explains that the devotees are always engaged in devotional service, and Krishna understands the mentality and sincerity of everyone, and particularly of the devotees. The devotees, Lord Krishna is watching very, very carefully, examining them regularly to understand their mentality, their attitudes, their moods, and their sincerity. Yes. And then Krishna gives them intelligence appropriately, gives them intelligence and puts them in different situations appropriately to stimulate them for increasing their sincerity, for them to understand how important it is to be more sincere, and for them to understand that I need to improve myself in this way and that. In this way, Krishna is kind to the devotees, to give them inspiration positively to progress, and even negatively to progress, by showing the devotees that if I become attached to the wrong things, if I start focusing on things which are detrimental to Krishna consciousness, I have a bad experience. I get kicked by Maya. So this is a negative stimulus. I must take shelter of Krishna more. Yes, so this is all just so important. Yeah. And as Prabhupada says at the end of the second paragraph, Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in this 9th chapter matters more confidential than any he has already disclosed. Then in the next paragraph, well, we've already basically been through that in our little introduction. It's more just what's been discussed here and there, different chapters, what's going to be discussed here. This 9th chapter deals with unalloyed pure devotion. We already read that. Therefore, it's called the most confidential. One who's situated in the most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. He therefore has no material pangs, no material distress, although he is in the material world. Yes. So anyone who's engaged like that, nicely in devotional service, particularly in hearing about Krishna, is to be considered liberated. Yes, so well, there's so much here. What can one say? In the next paragraph, now this first verse has specific significance. Specific significance. Oh. Yes. 1, 2, 3. This is the 4th paragraph. This first verse has specific significance. The words idam jnanam, this knowledge, refer to pure devotional service, which consists of 9 different activities: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping, praying, obeying, maintaining friendship, and surrendering everything. Through practicing like this, one makes progress. One becomes Krishna conscious. So like this. And then at the end of the purport, in the last paragraph, Srila Prabhupada stresses the need to be non-envious. It's essential to be non-envious if you want to be Krishna conscious. Prabhupada, let's just read a little bit. The Sanskrit word anasuyave in this verse is also very significant. Generally, the commentators, even if they're highly scholarly, are all envious of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the most erudite scholars write on Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately. Because they're envious of Krishna, their commentaries are useless. The commentaries given by devotees of the Lord are bona fide. Yes, and Prabhupada concludes the purport. For one who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pure and transcendental personality, these chapters will be very beneficial. And now, verse 2, which is, it's such an important verse, my gosh. Yeah. So, verse 2, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It's the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. Yes, so Raja Vidya, the king of knowledge, this is bhakti. Knowledge of bhakti, knowledge of Krishna, knowledge of how to serve Krishna, why to serve Krishna, in what ways, what consciousness, what moods, what attitudes, all these things. This is the Raja Vidya. So it's glorified in a number of different ways here. It's like 6 different ways, or seven different ways. It's so secret because it explains about the soul's relationship with Krishna, which is sort of like, you could say, an open secret. It's an open secret because Krishna has been distributing it through the ages, through the generations and kalpas and millennia, and just constantly, practically, just distributing and distributing and distributing. But it's secret because the consciousness of so many people, the materialistic people, their consciousness is such that their intelligence is closed off from this. Therefore, they don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Other than the practitioners of Krishna consciousness, who really knows? Generally, everybody else thinks it's just we must enjoy here. So it's an open secret. It's there just practically blatantly, openly in front of everyone, but because of their consciousness, they can't see it. Yeah. Just like, I don't know, do you know the story of Admiral Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar? Do you know that story? Admiral Nelson, this is a bit of British history for you from my school days, but it illustrates the point, sort of. Admiral Nelson, he was the leader of the British Navy, and he was like a super heavy, super dynamic warrior. And he just loved going to battle with the enemies of the British Empire. So one time, his navy and the fleet of the Spanish Armada, or maybe it was Napoleon, but I think it was Spanish Armada. They were coming to meet, and the Spanish had many more boats. And Admiral Nelson's assistant said, "Hey, we better get out of here. We're outnumbered." Nelson said, "Let me have a look." He had a telescope for seeing in the distance, which is just one. You can just put it against one eye and look and see what's in the distance. Admiral Nelson only had one eye. He had lost an eye somehow, and he really wanted to go into battle here. So he held it up. He held the telescope against his where he had no eye. And he said, "No, I don't see the Spanish. I don't see anything. Let's carry on." and they carried on and they had a great victory. So it's a little like that with the conditioned souls. They don't want to see Krishna. They don't want to know. They're envious of him. And they're fascinated with other things. Therefore, even though Krishna is being presented all over, but no, we don't know about Krishna. So in this way, it's the most secret of all secrets. Not because Krishna is trying to hide it. He's really not trying to do that at all. So now, it is the purest knowledge. It's the purest knowledge. How should we see that? It is so purifying that it cleanses one of all the effects of sins without the help of any other process. You don't need to do anything other than devotional service. So this knowledge of devotional service, how to do it in all different ways, is the purest knowledge, because through the knowledge and the application of it, one will become completely cleansed and purified. Then, this is very interesting, it is the perfection of religion, because it is the perfection of religion because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. That's important, isn't it? Just think about that. It is the perfection of religion. You will not find any presentation of religion better, because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. Not just that it explains things nicely. It does explain things nicely. But it's not just because it explains things nicely. It presents the process in such ways that if you practice the process properly, according to that knowledge, then you realize yourself directly. Not just some ideas, the soul is like this and the soul is like that. These types of things, just concepts. But you will come to see the soul. Plus, you will come to see Krishna. Therefore, it's the perfection of religion. Where does one get that in any other process? Well, frankly, you don't. You don't. You just get ideas, suggestions, but not direct perception. So, in other words, the process embodies the result. The process embodies the result. That's a slightly tricky idea, but it's a good one. So it's everlasting because it goes on. The process which the knowledge is about, which the knowledge explains, the process goes on after liberation. Normally you get these other processes, some type of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, or whatever, chakra yoga. Karma yoga is a very good example. Karma yoga means you do your material duty and offer the result to the Lord. But when you achieve perfection and go to the eternal kingdom of God, you do not have a material body. So you do not have any material duty. You see, so the process finishes when you reach the goal, the point of some form of liberation, salvation. Yeah, like the impersonalists, maybe they meditate. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Maybe you do some analysis, like in Sankhya Yoga, the 24 ingredients, earth, water, fire, air, ether, etc., ultimately the soul. And like this. And all these processes are to help you reach that point of liberation, which with the impersonalists means to just merge with everything, with Brahman. So you see, the process is different from the result. And the process stops when you achieve the result. But here, the process of devotional service and this knowledge of it is everlasting because it goes on after liberation. Here, today, Mother Yashoda Rani cooked the breakfast offering for Radha Radhanath. Am I right? Yes, because I had a little maha. In Goloka Vrindavan, Mother Yashoda Rani will cook breakfast for Krishna also. The process goes on. The process goes on. Here we serve Krishna. That's how we progress. In Goloka Vrindavan, we will serve Krishna. Here we chant Hare Krishna. It's the most important practice in this age. In Goloka Vrindavan, we will also chant Hare Krishna. It's everlasting. Let's see. And it's joyfully performed. It's joyfully performed means that you can engage yourself, your body, your mind, your senses. You can engage everything in it without inhibition. You can just dive into it, just get into it, and give yourself wholeheartedly with all your physical capabilities, psychological capabilities, just everything. So it's joyfully performed. It's so easy. Which includes, it's easy. As we'll see when we reach verse 26, which will be next week, then we'll see how Krishna explains that the process of devotional service is so easy, so incredibly easy. A child can easily do it. Just offer one leaf, one fruit, one flower, a little water. That's all you need to do in love, and Krishna will accept it. So that's quite something, isn't it? That really is. So verse 3 then. And this is, watch out. Just watch out here. Be careful. Verse 3. Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. Yeah, so that's a heavy warning. That's really a very strong warning. And Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, the faithless cannot accomplish this process of devotional service. That is the purport of this verse. And then, very important statement, faith is created by association with devotees. Unfortunate people, even after hearing all the evidence of Vedic literature from great personalities, great devotees, still have no faith in God. Yes. And Prabhupada mentions here in this first paragraph that there's a definition in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a definition of faith. And it's a verse which we quoted when we were doing Nectar of Devotion. Shraddha Shabde Vishvas Kahe, Shudrada Nishchoy, Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. Shraddha, this term Shraddha means, Shraddha Shabde, this word Shraddha means that simply by rendering devotional service to Krishna, one will achieve whatever may be achieved by any other method, plus one will go back to Godhead. So one will not be bereft of anything that one could have got through some other material process, but rather one will get that and go back to Godhead, which one will not be able to do through any other process. And Prabhupada quotes a verse from the 4th canto about how if we please Krishna, we satisfy everyone else. And Prabhupada says just at the end of that paragraph, therefore after reading Bhagavad Gita, one should promptly come to the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita that one should give up all other engagements and adopt the service of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. If one is convinced of this philosophy of life, that is faith. And I remember when I first read Bhagavad Gita, I had only been a devotee a matter of weeks, or I would say maximum 2 months or so. And I read the Bhagavad Gita, and when I put it down, the thought just entered my mind, that's it. I have to surrender. There is no good alternative. That's it. And so that's faith. That's faith. So anyway, faith is very important. And you get faith from associating with devotees, means devotees who have faith. In the last paragraph, quite long paragraph, Prabhupada talks about the first, second, and third class devotees in terms of their faith. This we've also discussed in Nectar of Devotion. Third class devotee, let's just read what Prabhupada says. This is in the middle, more or less, sort of in the middle of the paragraph, last paragraph. As far as the development of faith is concerned, one who is well versed in the literatures of devotional service and has attained the stage of firm faith is called a first-class person in Krishna consciousness. And in the second class are those who are not very advanced in understanding the devotional scriptures, but who automatically have firm faith that Krishna Bhakti, or service to Krishna, is the best course, and so in good faith have taken it up. Then there's the third class. Thus they're superior to the third class, who have neither perfect knowledge of the scriptures nor good faith, but by association and simplicity they're trying to follow. Third class person in Krishna consciousness may fall down, but when one is in the second class, Madhyamadikari, he does not fall down. And for the first class person, there's no possibility of falling down. Right. Okay. So these people who took to devotional service but they couldn't develop faith, then they fall down and just go back to material life. All right, let's go on to the next section, Krishna's achintya abhed relationship with the material world. And it's philosophical, but it's very nice, very interesting. So, this is the beginning of this confidential knowledge, which is going to increase our faith and devotion. It's a type, you could say, of Aishvarya Gyan, meaning knowledge about Krishna's opulence, power. It'll arouse a sense of servitude towards the Lord in us. And this will be a catalyst for our devotion. It is Sambandha Gyan, knowledge of relationship with Krishna. Our relationship, everything's relationship. And we need this understanding if we're going to build a basis upon which we'll be inspired to render devotional service. This word jnana, like many Sanskrit words, it has a number of meanings. The simple meaning is knowledge. Another meaning is, jnana means an instrument by which you know. An instrument that helps you to know. So jnana is not different from bhakti if it is explaining to us how to understand Krishna. That jnana is part of bhakti. Yes, so it's not that the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Tattva was created by Lord Chaitanya. He was the first one to kind of point it out very clearly and distinguish it from other aspects of the philosophy and to give it the name. Some say Jiva Goswami gave it the name. But it's an eternal philosophy, and here in these verses we will see Krishna presents Achintya Bheda Tattva. How everything is the same as him, but different from him at the same time. So the idea presented then in this section from verse 4 to verse 10 is that Krishna pervades, creates, and annihilates the entire cosmos through his material energy. And although Krishna is the supreme director, the material world nevertheless moves independently, and Krishna therefore remains neutral and detached. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, so how should we do this? We're not going to finish the whole section tonight. I think what I'll do, First of all, let's look at verse 4 and verse 5, because they are connected to each other. So I'll read them right now. Both verses. Verse 4. So Krishna says, "By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them." Okay, now, bear that in mind, devotees. So, all beings are in me, but I'm not in them. I'm pervading everything, and yet everything that is created does not rest in me. This is verse 5. "Behold my mystic opulence. Although I'm the maintainer of all living entities, and although I'm everywhere, I am not part of this cosmic manifestation. For myself is the very source of creation. So, okay, let's go back, have a look through verse 4 then. By me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. So, Lord Krishna here then, the purport is it's not very long. Lord Krishna begins by explaining how, because Krishna said, by me in my unmanifested form. You can't see it. You can't see me. It's not manifest to the senses. So Prabhupada begins the purport by quoting Chaitanya Charitamrita or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Madhya Lila 17:136, famous verse, Atakshi Krishna Namadi, Nabhaved Grayam Indriyai, Sevan Mukhehi Jivado, Swayameva Sparatyada. Prabhupada paraphrases the translation that Lord Sri Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, etc. cannot be understood by material senses. Only to one who's engaged in pure devotional service under proper guidance is he revealed. Yeah. Sevon Mukhe, by service, that Atakshi Krishna Nam Adi Nabhaved Graham Indriyai. Krishna, his name and the rest of him, Nabhaved, cannot be perceived, Grahyam Indriyai, by Indriyai means the senses, and Grahyam basically means just like mundane material senses. But, Sevon Mukhehi Jivado, if we render service, seva, jiva ado, jiva means the tongue actually, and ado means beginning with, at first. If we render service to the Lord, beginning with the tongue, by chanting and tasting prasad, then swayam eva spuratyada, then we will directly perceive him. Sure, that's powerful. That's really powerful. Aha. Yes. So, and then Prabhupada quotes Bhakti Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Valochena, Santasadaiva Hridayeshu Valokayanti. The devotees whose eyes are anointed with the ointment of love can see Krishna Hridayeshu, within the heart. Yeah. So anyway, let's have a look here. So Prabhupada gives the example of a king. The king is controlling the whole kingdom, but not personally. He has his representatives. Just like here, the state president. He has the police force. He doesn't run around giving people parking tickets. But the parking tickets that the police give, he is behind them. He's the ultimate authority who has said, you do that, give them a ticket. So for a king it's like that, for Krishna it's like that. Everything's resting on Krishna's energy. And the energy is one with him and different from him. Just like the lights are in the ceiling, the light fittings, that's where the light here is coming from. But the light is all around us here. So there's a oneness but there's a difference also. So in the last sentence of the purport, or last couple of sentences, Prabhupada says, similarly, all the manifestations that we see and everything that exists, both in this material world and in the spiritual world, are resting on the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The creation takes place by the diffusion of his different energies, and as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam, he is everywhere present by his personal representation, the diffusion of his different energies. And there's something here I've got from Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada gave a class on this verse 4, and then 5, 6, and 7, on those 4 verses. And Prabhupada said this, listen to this. Electric power can be transmitted everywhere. An electrician can take electric power from anywhere and utilize it. Similarly, Krishna's energy spread all over the universe. When we're transcendently situated, just like the electrician, we can see God eye to eye. Premanjana Charita Bhakti Valochanena. That creation, spiritualization of the senses, is possible by devotional service and love. His energy is spread all over the universe, all over the world. And by his energy, he can be present anywhere and everywhere simultaneously. The conclusion is, when his devotee is there, he can manifest himself everywhere and anywhere. But when there is no devotee, he is not there, although his energy is there. There are many instances. Prahlad Maharaj saw Krishna from the pillar. So for the devotee, Krishna is personally there. Wherever the devotee goes, Krishna is with them. But when the devotee is not there, Krishna is present, but in the form of his energies. He doesn't involve himself personally where there are no devotees. All right, and then verse 5. Let me just repeat verse 4, because the two, they're so intimately connected. Verse 4, by me and my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. 5, and yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Yeah, he just said he pervades the entire universe, and everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this cosmic manifestation. For myself is the very source of creation. Interesting little point, just by the way, that according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Arjuna protests after hearing these 2 verses, 4 and 5, just one after the other. And Arjuna says, you have just contradicted yourself. But Lord Krishna replies, no. See my supernatural power. See my extraordinary skill in doing what cannot be done. And see something else which is astonishing. Even though I'm the maintainer of all living beings in the universe and the protector of them all, I, in my spiritual body, am not situated in them. So this is Beda Bade. I support all living entities, but I'm not in them, just my energy. They're not in him in the same way that water is in a pot. So then, according to Baladev Vijabhuchan, Arjuna says, but in the previous verse you said that everything was situated in you. And in this verse you contradict this by saying everything is not in you. Krishna replies, understand that this is my extraordinary mystical power. Yogam Aishvaram. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada makes the point that Krishna's involvement in the material world is not like Atlas. You've seen pictures of Atlas holding up the globe? Yeah, you know that. So Krishna's involvement and, supporting and all that, everything resting on him, is not like how the planet rests on Atlas. He looks very tired. But same idea as in verse 4, it's situated on his energy. And Srila Prabhupada makes the point in the second paragraph, in the second sentence, second paragraph, his person is full of different potent energies, and his determination is itself actual fact. In this way, the personality of Godhead is to be understood. We may think of doing something, but there's so many impediments, and sometimes it's not possible to do as we like. But when Krishna wants to do something, simply by his willing, everything is performed so perfectly that one cannot imagine how it is being done. So he doesn't even have to really touch it and get involved as such. And finally, Prabhupada concludes the purport. Simultaneously, the Lord is present in everything, yet the common man cannot understand how he's also present personally. He's different from this material manifestation, yet everything is resting on him. This is explained here as Yogam Aishvaram, the mystic power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So tomorrow we will carry on from here, and Krishna will clarify further how things are working in this context, and he'll help us understand the meaning behind these things more easily. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.